Welcome to Behind the Black Belt, a podcast about the people and black belts of BJJ.
Welcome to Behind the Black Belt. I'm your host, Rich, and today my guest is BJJ black belt, Kim Cousins. Now, Kim is a black belt out of Absolute MMA in Melbourne, Australia, and she is an active competitor on the BJJ scene and has competed at every belt level since she has started training. What do I mean by active? Well, how about 11 competitions in a 12-month period, including 4 interstate trips? This is just one of Kim's impressive competition years. And she's even had the opportunity to train with the famous Kron Gracie whilst in America competing at the 2014 World Championships. And we're very excited to have Kim on the show tonight. And Kim Cousins, welcome to the show. And thank you for being on here tonight with me.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me. Really humbled by that introduction. So hopefully I can live up to those words.
Well, we've got a lot to cover tonight, Kim. So how about we get straight into it? And why don't you get to start us off, Kim? Where were you born and where were you raised?
Born here in Melbourne. Born and bred, in Melbourne. Something that perhaps not a lot of people know about me. My parents are actually Sri Lankan. So They came here in the 70s before I was born, and my brother was born there, but no, I was born here. Grew up around the Doncaster, Templestowe sort of area. Went to school in Kew. Went to an actually all-girls private Catholic school for 13 years. My entire childhood, I guess, my entire education was at an all-girls private school. So,
Go. And what brought your parents from Sri Lanka and to Victoria and Melbourne in particular?
Yeah, the war that was going on, I mean, it's been going on for most of my life, was the main reason that they came over. There's actually a pretty big Sri Lankan community in Melbourne. Mm-hmm. So they knew people sort of that were also out here. So, yeah, they sort of just came out. And, yeah, I've been back there once when I was 5 or so. It's a strange sort of nationality to be, I guess, because until the cricket team, I would say, were the ones that really put them on the map.
Yeah.
For the majority of my first 5 or 10 years of my life, a lot of people didn't actually know where Sri Lanka was.
Yeah.
Like, it was really, unknown. So it was quite difficult sometimes growing up to have to, and even now, still as an adult, to have to explain to people that because I'm Sri Lankan doesn't mean that I'm going to be Sinhalese or Tamil. Like there's other sort of ethnicities within Sri Lanka. Mm-hmm. And that's my background.
That's fascinating. Do you have a strong affinity still with Sri Lanka, considering you were sort of born and bred in Melbourne?
Yeah, not so much. Like it's, I'm probably an interesting Sri Lankan because I've known Aussies that actually have a stronger ability to handle curries and things like that than me. Yeah. I don't actually have much of that gene in me. But I guess I've got lucky because I got sort of the olive skin. And to be honest, I'm almost half the time I go to comps, especially international comps, mistaken for being Brazilian. I think that's because the Sri Lankan, I'm what's called a burger, which is sort of the Dutch and the Portuguese that colonized Sri Lanka. Mm-hmm. Back in the 16th century. So that I think is a similar sort of perhaps ethnicity to Brazilian. Yeah.
Some sort of deep sort of connection there. You should totally use that to your advantage.
I try. I should have brushed up better on my Portuguese because that would have scored me a few extra points at some of those comps.
Yeah, that's great. So Kim, you said you went through an all girls Catholic school.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
So I was, I guess I was pretty straight. My kids like to say I was probably quite the nerd.
Yeah.
Didn't get in trouble much. Did more or less as I was told until I got to about 16. I think that's sort of the cliche, isn't it? And then I went a little bit the other way. Not too bad, but just got that sort of out of my system.
Yeah.
And I finished up and then I went on to uni. From there, I went to Deakin University and I studied commerce. So it was pretty much straight out of school. I didn't do sort of a year off, what do they call it, gap year or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I just sort of straight in, finished uni and then started working full time. So that was sort of the way my years went.
And were you a very active kid? Did you play any sports?
Yeah, definitely. I was a swimmer. So my family background, my grandfather went to the Commonwealth Games for swimming. My
Huh.
mum, I think she just missed qualifying. So yeah, we've always had a pretty strong swimming background.
Yeah.
So I grew up, 5 a.m. starts, in the pool. Yeah,
Oh man.
getting it in before school. So yeah, I'm very familiar with that sort of lifestyle.
And I mean, I mean, I've grown up with a lot of kids that did that swimming start, and I, tried it once. And
Yeah.
it was so hard to wake up that early and do that training. At what age did you have this discipline, and what kept you going to that swimming?
It was through my teens, to be honest. It was probably from about 13 to about 16.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, when I hit around 16, I tended to, leave some of those things behind, like swimming and stuff. I just, went in another direction.
Yeah. Okay. And when you were coming up through school, what were your kind of aspirations? What did you want to do after school? What was the dream?
Yeah, look, I don't know that I really had like a specific career aspiration or profession or whatever. I sort of just, to be honest, fell into the job that certainly the job that I got straight out of school
Mm,
and straight out of uni. So I sort of just rolled from high school into uni and then uni into a job. And it just sort of, I was never really like, God, I really want to be a lawyer or a teacher or a
yeah.
nurse or
Okay.
anything. No, it didn't, that wasn't me really.
Just sort of just for almost like a free spirit, just living your
Yeah.
life in
I
the
don't know,
moment.
like it
You
just,
did everything.
I wouldn't say free spirit, like, because I'm quite the opposite of that. But no, I didn't necessarily put a lot of stock into the actual job. And to be honest, I still
Yeah.
don't think
Okay.
I do now. I don't think that what you do as a job sort of defines who you are as a person.
Sure.
But I do feel that a lot of the time, I guess society tends to do that. It's just, it's human nature, isn't it? Like people
It
might
is.
say, hey, how are you? What do you, getting to know someone, what do you do for work or something? It's one of the first kind of conversation
Hmm.
topics that come up. So it's sort of, a little bit easy to judge people based on that, I think.
Yeah. And so you were a pretty good student. You said until you had your rebellious sort of years, which
Yeah, the
everyone does, I
teen years.
suppose.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, I
then
did okay.
yeah, good. And then you went off to uni and
Mm,
studied commerce. So
yep.
for those that don't know what commerce is, give us a quick summary of what that is.
I guess it's sort of like the money system and the way businesses operate and things like that,
Yeah.
and the world around that.
Yeah. Okay. And is it was that something of particular interest to you?
Again, yeah, just the way it sort of went. To be honest, no. You asked earlier about the career. I guess I did have an aim to be like a journalist or something like
Yeah.
that, like
Okay.
something with writing, and because I was quite good at that stuff going through school. And then I got with my uni selections. I went all the way through with the journalism course, which back then there was only really one course that took like 15, 20 people for the whole state. And I got right to the end with me and one other person, and they chose the
Yeah.
other person.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
oh man, I wish. So
Yeah.
I always sort of had that yearning, and any opportunity I had to write later on, like if there was I don't know, doing a thing for the kids' school, and there was like a newsletter that needed to
Oh
be
yeah.
written, I'm like, yep, I'll do it. Any of that sort of stuff. I just really
Yeah.
seem to enjoy that.
It sounds like you're an expressive person. You like to speak, you like to write.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself still doing that now?
Sometimes now, yeah, and like I can go into that a bit later on. That I did have quite a lot of journals and
Oh, cool.
diaries, especially in the early days of jiu-jitsu. I
Yeah,
think it helped
sweet.
me a lot. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I
All
have
right,
that.
we'll get to that for sure. Talk to us about sort of your parents. What did they do in the Victoria, in the Melbourne region as you're growing
Sure.
up?
Yeah, so my mum's a doctor.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which is quite interesting because back in that generation, I guess, like she's 70s now, like not a lot of female doctors. So yeah,
Yeah.
she came across, and my dad, so that was, my mum was kind of like the breadwinner, I guess, in the family. My dad
Okay.
was, he was a professional as well. He was sort of managing at it was like a label factory for stickers.
Yep.
I don't know how old you are, but back when I was a kid, that used to have like stickers that you would peel and put onto things and stuff
Her
like that.
stickers
So
were all the
yeah,
rage. I mean,
yeah,
imagine telling a kid, tell one of your kids that people used to collect sticker books to collect stickers.
yes.
Blow their mind how boring
I
we
was
were.
the queen of that. Those sticker albums. People trade me. I had them all. Yep,
Yeah, I could
that was
imagine.
me. Yeah.
Especially if your dad was right in the industry, you'd have an inside
Oh,
link to the cool stickers.
I'd come with rolls of the stuff. So when I could ration them out and stuff. Yeah, everyone was my friend those days.
Crushing
Yeah,
it.
that was it.
Oh, that's great. And you mentioned you had a brother. How many siblings have you got?
Yeah, so my older brother, he's 5 years older than me.
Okay.
So he's still here in Melbourne now. Uh, he's an architect now, actually. I
Yeah,
guess quite traditional in a way, growing up. What's happened to my
yeah.
internet?
And so sorry, you broke up for a little bit there. So you just got the one sibling?
Yeah, just the one
Okay,
older
cool.
brother, Jeremy. He's 5 years older. So
And you guys
yes.
are pretty tight?
Oh, he's here in Melbourne. So
Yeah.
yeah, he and we're not super close. Like we're not. I know a lot of siblings, talk on the phone every other day or even every week and stuff like that. We're not really that way inclined. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely, if there was, something and I needed him, he would most definitely be there as a shoulder for me.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So as you were growing up, what were your kind of influences? Do you remember sort of looking at anything or anyone and just sort of aspiring for that?
As a kid, not so much,
Okay.
I guess. Like, I don't know if that's just me, but maybe as a more as an adult, I started to look into people, I guess, who were just motivating me in what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember any in particular?
Some of those leaders who sort of had to fight against depression and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so your Martin Luther Kings and those sort of people.
Yeah.
Just who could lead people. I wouldn't necessarily say they were females or anything like that, but yeah, definitely that sort of ability to lead, I think, really influenced me a lot.
Yeah. And, Martin Luther King, not only the ability to lead, but just a great communicator,
Yeah, that's
and,
right.
you love
Exactly.
communicating.
Yeah.
It makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the uni years. So you go off to do commerce.
Yep.
What's life at uni like for you? Are you a straight A student? Are you still rebelling?
No, so what leading back to what we were saying previously about the journalism. So I didn't get in, and then what that meant was I kind of just fell into commerce, which was the subjects that I was, I guess, kind of good at, but not really that interested in through school. So that's where I went with that. Was living in Melbourne, as I said at the time, went straight from an all-girls Catholic, pretty studious kind of school, straight out into uni. So it was a bit of a taste for me into the world and what life's like out there. And it was cool. It was that's when I guess my rebellious stage really kicked in, and started going to a lot of the nightclubs and things like that, and doing those all-nighters. And I guess probably sounds pretty tame now, but for me back then they were pretty busy, pretty wild times.
Yeah. And so you weren't swimming. Were you doing any other sports or anything like that at uni?
Yeah,
Or
at that stage I joined a gym. As soon as I finished school, I was going to a gym with weights and things like that. And that was a bit of a turning point, because that's when I sort of realised that my body was a little bit different to a lot of other people's in the way that I could do stuff. Like I just found it a lot easier to lift heavier things than what other people were in the gym.
Yeah, right. Any sort of lifting in particular? I mean, I'd assume you're not doing like Pilates classes or those.
No. This was like an actual gym. So I went in there, and that's actually where I met my now ex-husband. So he was a gym instructor in there, and he was writing my programs for me. So, giving me just the average kind of, I don't know how other people do it, but, a little bit of cardio, then breaking up my weights program for me. So giving me, squats and lunges, and then bench press and, whatever, bicep curls and things like that. And then
you were just excelling at it.
Yeah, I was just finding the amount of weights that other people were lifting was very different to what I was lifting.
Okay.
That makes sense. Like I'd have, I look at another woman like, oh, okay, she's lifting 10 kilos. I better pick up the 10 kilos. And I would think, oh, this is doing nothing.
Yeah.
I'd have to go up to 15 kilos. And then I looked around and think, oh, but wait, the guys are doing 15 kilos. So it was a bit of an eye opener for me there.
Yeah. And did you go anywhere with that? Like, were you?
Well, at the time, I was also perhaps looking at doing a triathlon.
Yeah, right.
So it was a little bit against my body type when I look at it back now
Hmm.
in retrospect. But back then I had this goal of trying to think I could look like Nicole Kidman or something like that in terms of my frame. And
Yeah,
I was ridiculously fighting against my own natural body type.
yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
was, yeah, trying to do these ridiculous amount of running and just trying to get skinny, I
Yeah.
guess.
And did you ever go into a triathlon?
No, I never got that far actually. Thank goodness now I think about it. But yeah, I
Uh,
was just getting the hang of the running, and then I was still going to work on the cycling because that was certainly not my forte. So I was probably going to be a little bit different to many triathletes who I feel like a lot of them have come from that running background or maybe
mm,
cycling background, but the swim would have been my strongest
yeah, yeah, yeah.
leg of that. So that was where I was coming from, which was nice. But yeah, just even to this day, I'm certainly not a runner. But
Yeah.
yeah, I had this vision that I could, become so skinny and I would have the right frame for it, etc. But yeah, it didn't happen.
I think triathlon has got to be one of those sports where if someone is really serious about triathlon, I say they're a little crazy, because it is such a range of disciplines back to
Oh
back.
yeah,
I mean, not only are you swimming and then running, oh sorry, swimming and then cycling, but
yeah.
you're cycling in wet clothes. Like just the little 1%ers like that would be just
Oh, it's
miserable.
crazy. I mean, one of those things is enough, really, because they do like
Yeah, yeah.
2.5K swim and then a whatever. Like, yeah, that alone is crazy. So yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I had a friend that I don't know, no, because triathlon is that the Olympic distance. I'm pretty sure that's when you
Yeah,
finish with like running a marathon or something, isn't
something
it?
like that. Yeah, it's
It's
crazy.
it's
It's
ridiculous.
stupid. Like, yeah,
And
it's
when I say ridiculous, like, it's because I'm jealous that I can't do it. That's
Oh
that's
yeah,
why
well,
I think it's
I
ridiculous.
never went as far, and was starting to enroll for some like smaller, what do you call them, like mini triathlons and things like
Yeah,
that. But no, never happened. And then, like I said, I really started to enjoy lifting and lifting heavy,
yeah,
and that sort of goes against any of that endurance sporty type of stuff. So yeah,
yeah. Okay, all right. And tell us about your ex-husband. I asked because I read that he was the way that you got into jujitsu.
yeah. So we were always pretty active. So we were, as I said, we met in the gym, and he at that time it was around the beginning of the UFC, so whatever year that was in the mid '90s,
Okay.
and then he was like, I really want to start jiu-jitsu. So he actually started Brazilian jiu-jitsu back, when there was not even no black belts even in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Like Peter Devine and John Will was still brown belts. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Wow. And so, what did you do? You remember what you thought about it back then in the 90s?
I was pretty keen on it. I got to be honest. I mean, it was a weird thing because there was no chicks at all. There was no girls, but
Yeah,
I had thought I'd maybe be all right at this because I was quite strong,
yeah,
and I sort of, my ex wasn't very keen on me sort of doing it,
mm-hmm.
so yeah, I didn't start. I don't know how I would have gone, to be honest, because I actually feel really some of those younger girls that start jiu-jitsu, it must be very hard to be like a 15-year-old girl or whatever doing jiu-jitsu in a room full of guys, because it's hard enough as an older female.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know how I would have managed actually if I had
Yeah.
gotten through with it, but yeah, so I didn't start till I was 34.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, let's talk about sort of the gap between sort of when you finished uni, you're doing this strength training, and then you
Yeah.
sort of get to jiu-jitsu. Where did life take you in those few years?
Yeah, so then as I finished uni, just after that, I'd met my ex-husband while I was at uni. So
Yep.
we started seeing each other. We moved in together. Looking back, I guess it was quite early.
Yep.
I was 20, and yeah, we moved in. As I said, went straight from uni to full-time work. So just rolled straight into it. No kind of gap to travel or anything like that.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah, we settled down pretty quickly. He's 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
So maybe that was part of it, that he was quite, I guess,
Just settled.
yeah,
It
mature.
sounds.
He wasn't
Yeah.
certainly not like other 20-year-olds. When we started seeing each other, he was 30, I was 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was sort of swept off my feet a little bit now, thinking
Yeah.
about it. So he and I moved in together when, I think even before I turned 21.
Okay.
And then, as I said, because I was working, he was working, and I just kind of went straight in there. Had not really gotten a great job, but I was happy enough with it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, as I said to you, growing up of the opinion of like, I really want this job. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Journalism was kind of in the back of my mind, but it wasn't like I lived and breathed for it. Like it
Yeah.
was the end of my life if I didn't do it. So I I just sort of was working in a call center actually
Yep.
as sort of like a team leader,
Okay.
and not greatly into it, but enough that it paid the bills. I sort of the opinion, as long as I'm not um, like really wanting to hurt someone or really hating my job, I don't really care what I do for work.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, as long as it pays enough and I'm not totally brain dead and I work with
Yep.
okay people, like I might as well. Yeah. So that was, but I was still sort of looking around thinking maybe this, maybe that. So looking back now, I think, God, maybe that was the wrong decision or way to go to have a kid, because so that's what happened. So yeah, fell pregnant when I was 24.
Okay.
My oldest son had came when I was 25. Went back to work, still not really super happy with it. And then I was
Yeah.
like, oh, you know what? Let's just have another kid. So I had
Yep.
another one. So then
Yep.
pregnant 26, another kid at 27. And after that, it was pretty relentless. You know, those early years having
Absolutely.
kids, like,
Yeah.
yeah. And then really felt still a little bit clucky. Like, I don't know, maybe something was missing. So I had one more at 30,
Yep.
just before I turned 31. So, yes, I had 3 boys
Okay.
between sort of, I guess, 5 years apart.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite a handful in a very short period of time, and
Yeah.
and you're still working in between,
Yeah.
and
So I just worked part-time while they
yeah,
were so small. And looking back now, that was possibly part of the reason my marriage ended. We just really didn't have a lot of time for each other. It
yeah,
was sort of quite two ships passing in the night kind of thing. So he would work super early. Like, he was a personal trainer. So he would
yeah,
work from 6 in the morning till maybe 1 or 2 in the afternoon, come home, we'd do almost like a relay race baton change,
yeah,
and he'd take the kids and do the evening part, and then I would work, because I'd worked in call centers. They always had like the flexibility with hours and things like that.
yeah.
So yeah, we juggled it. We had kind of a decision made quite early on that we didn't want to put them into childcare.
Hmm.
So we were pretty adamant on raising them. But looking back now, I reckon we should have probably tried to do a few more date nights, a few more kind of getting to nurture our relationship as well as just the family or individually or whatever, because it's quite a juggle, especially in those early years with the kids, to get that right, to have that time for yourself,
Yeah,
have that time as a family, and then have the time as a couple.
yeah,
And for us, we sort of put the priority last about the couple stuff. We'll do it next week. We'll do it next week.
yeah,
But looking back, as I said, you sort of realize if you don't kind of invest that time, especially in each other, just as individuals, you really lose a bit that spark. It's very easy to lose the romance as well in the hustle and bustle of having little kids. You know, they're relentless. They just take
absolutely.
all your attention, all your energy. So it's really easy to sort of neglect the other person.
I
So
mean,
yeah.
that's such incredibly wise words, Kim. No, seriously,
It has been more than 10 years for me to realise that. It wasn't
you know,
always like this.
but I mean, no, but that's such a good lesson for young couples out there or young people out there, because you're so right. You know, I've got a stack of kids, and when you start having these kids, you're like, okay, I just got to be the best parent I can
Yeah.
be. But you forgot that the start of the relationship that created that kid was trying to be the best partner you could be. You
Yeah.
know, and you got to balance the
Yeah. It's
two.
a lot of hats. It's a lot of swapping hats.
Absolutely.
But yeah, at the same time as that, you also still need that time for yourself. And I think
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
sometimes can get neglected as well. And really important to have just time for you without kids, without a partner. And yeah, it's very tricky. Very,
Yeah.
very difficult. But
Incredibly wise. You should write that down. So write about that. If you
yeah.
haven't written about that, Kim, please write
Yeah.
about that, because there's some
Thank
very,
you.
very powerful
Yes,
sentiments
this is
there.
one of the benefits of being a bit older. As you get older, you learn all these things. It's like, if only I knew that. I knew that then. Yeah,
It's
anyway,
called
yeah,
it's called being wise.
yeah.
You are wise. All right, Kim. So let's talk about where you at. Sorry, excuse me. Where you are at when jiu-jitsu
Mm.
comes into your life as something that you now do.
Yeah, so my ex-husband and I, like, the relationship sort of ended, and it wasn't a great ending, to be honest. I don't know how other couples end, but ours was not great. There was a little bit of bitterness and
Yeah.
etc. So with him having done jiu-jitsu and having been a little bit against me doing it, it was a little bit of a sort of a fuck you that I would go
Yeah.
to jiu-jitsu that he
Yeah.
didn't want. And
Absolutely.
another reason, he'd done it at Peter Devine,
Yeah.
which was back then there was pretty much dominance, and Peter Devine, they were the only schools in Melbourne, and had a bit of a falling out with him. This was while he and I were still together, and then left and went and trained with Big Dave, who was previously had been a dominant. So because of him leaving Devine on quite bad terms, that was part of the reason why I actually went and trained there. So
Spite.
that, yeah, it was a little
Spite
bit of a
training.
get back at him kind of thing. But it took only a few months, and I realised that I wasn't really doing it anymore to get back at him. It was more about me. So it started out as a little bit of a vengeance thing, but it didn't last long like that.
I can tell you, Kim, one of the favorite things about this podcast is I get to discover how black belts started training, and I have never,
No,
I've
yeah, I'm
never,
pretty unique in
never
that one.
spoken to anyone who started
Yeah.
out of spite.
So someone
That's
said to me
fantastic.
once, another black belt actually, Esther, who's a female black belt in Australia, said to me that, yeah, well, he was good for something then. So,
There you go.
it's true. He's helped bring
There
me
you
to
go.
jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
So, so as someone that had seen BJJ, but quite a while ago before you went and did your first lesson, what were your first impressions of when you first went, especially from a female's perspective?
Yeah. Well, as I'd done quite a lot of gym work and I'd felt like I was pretty athletic growing up, it was a little bit of a shock to my system, quite an ego blow. I don't know how the guys feel about this, but I personally was thinking, oh yeah, I'll be able to hold my own. I know what an arm bar is. I can do this. I've watched the UFC, and God, it doesn't last long. You get schooled pretty quickly, and
Yeah.
yeah, that attitude is right out the door.
Yeah. And were there many other females training at the time?
No,
No.
so when I was at Devine, the entire time I was there, it was myself and I think two other females.
Okay.
So who are brown and black belts now, but yeah, there would be maybe a girl or two that would drift in and out, but never really lasted more than a couple of months.
Yeah. And when did when did you really start to take jiu-jitsu seriously?
I guess, Devine at that time was quite a competitive club where everybody, or at least half of the people in the classes, would be competing.
Yeah.
So I kind of just got, maybe it's a bit like my school, actually, thinking about it now. I just got swept up in it and I just went along with the competition.
Yeah.
And when there were competitions in places like outside, because back then, I mean, this is like 2010, there was no comps every kind of weekend or every other weekend like there are now. You had two big comps a year, and any others you'd have to travel. So some of them would start traveling. So I think it would probably be around there that I started. Well, the very beginning, I would just kind of travel along, like to go along with the team and just compete while I was there. But I guess, end of blue belt was where I started to maybe take a little bit more seriously in terms of competing.
Okay.
But yeah, even from white belt, I did compete quite a bit, but that was just more of a just go along and like a hobby kind of thing.
And talk to us about this competition, because I mean, reading a lot about your competition background, and you've done a lot. You kind of get your BJJ practitioners that are either all the way in or all the way out of competitions.
Yeah.
So what makes you someone that is all the way in? You said you went along with
I guess
it, but
I'm a pretty goal-driven person. Like with anything with life, like I like to achieve something. I don't want to just kind of drift along. And I feel like, to me, it's just been a way that's helped me stay accountable, so that I stay sort of on the task, and that I can actually keep moving forward in what I do, because I feel like it's such a deep art that it's very easy to get stagnant and just stay kind of drifting along at the same old all the time. I mean, even though it's a hobby for me, I guess my personality is a little bit obsessive, so I've gone all in learning about it, and that I found was the best way to learn quicker.
Yeah. Okay. And talk us through your sort of belt progression, if you remember it.
Yeah.
You're sort of white to blue belt. You sort of big highs, your big lows, and getting your blue belt.
As a chick, honestly, white belt, it sucks. I mean, maybe as a guy as well, but it really is a small female. You're just a punching bag for everyone, because you don't even have any strength.
Okay.
You're a fairly strong girl, but some white belt guys can still muscle their ways out of stuff.
Yeah.
So as a chick, you're just on the bottom all the time. And I feel like that's partly why females tend to develop a guard a little bit quicker than guys, because they
Okay.
have to. You've got no option when you're underneath and you're trying to escape. So you end up escaped, but you're still on your back. And
Hmm.
then, yeah, there comes your guard, certainly guard retention. And then
Yep.
from guard retention, you get some attacks.
And then you sort of work your way through your white belt. You got your blue belt.
Yeah,
And
it was a grind, Rich. Like white
yeah,
belt, I was like, I lost. I went to competition after competition and lost over and over and over, and I finally won. And I remember I won the open weight at white belt.
yeah,
The next week, I got my blue belt. So it's
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like you climb that mountain, get to the top. Oh God, there's another mountain, and you start way back at the bottom. And I found with blue belt, actually, people weren't quite as nice to me as they had been. So where I was saying, oh, being a white belt, you're getting smashed, it's even worse at blue belt because
yeah,
they
yeah,
don't
yeah.
hold back quite as much. A white belt guy and a blue belt chick, he's going to give her a little bit harder time than he would a white belt chick. It's just
And
the way it goes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And when did you, you talked about being a female white belt is pretty tough,
Yep.
and you have to sort of sink or swim sort of thing. And when did you start finding that you had the skills to then sort of compensate for that lack of strength if you came against a strong male?
God, I don't know. It wasn't at blue. I don't even know that it was quite at purple, to be honest. I always kind of felt like, and it's a terrible feeling. I don't know if other girls feel this, that I was like a really bad partner. Like, oh, I'd have to almost like apologize. Like, oh, I'm sorry, you have to take me as a partner.
Yeah.
And that they would never gain anything from having me.
Okay.
And it wasn't until kind of around purple belt that I started to feel a little bit more confident with myself that I was actually still giving them something as a even as a dummy or whatever.
Yeah.
I was always apologetic.
And do you think that confidence came from you had enough skill, you had enough time, you had enough reps under your belt?
Yeah, maybe it was a bit of everything. Yeah, a bit of competition results as well. I feel like, especially towards the end of blue, I came into my own, and I really feel like purple as well is where you sort of craft out your game.
Yeah,
So you
okay.
just become a little bit more nuanced in certain things, and then that brings confidence to your overall game, but certainly in those areas that you are good at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, so are you still training with Devine at this stage?
Yeah, so I was, as I said, competing interstate quite a bit. So there was 1 year in blue belt, I think it was 2013. I did, yeah, like you saw, 11 comps in a year. Travelled all over, went to Tassie, Northern Territory, Sydney a couple of times. Like, it was great. And yeah, just got really right into the comp scene, won some, lost some. And I feel like that really helped my progress.
Yeah.
Around that time as well, I started still at Devine doing Michael Horrigan's classes where he would actually drill. So just to give you a bit of background, when I was at Devine, I don't know how other schools do it, but it was a bit odd. We would actually just come to class. He would quite often be quite late. He would ask the class any questions. Someone would ask a random question. Then he'd have the answer. So partner up and drill to do the answer to that. And then we would do sweeping and passing drills, which was, he would pick a series of people that would sit in the middle of the mat and everybody else would be a line on the wall. You'd have to go up to each station or whatever, and they would try and sweep. You would try and pass. The winner would stay in. So it just became a series of white and blue belts on the line, and all the black and brown belts were in sweeping everybody. So that's, that was pretty much, and then free rolling. So we never really broke down techniques the way that other sort of clubs do.
Okay. And when did you start, and when did you get that experience of?
So then with Horrigan's classes, he was a more senior student under Pete Devine at that time. And he started running classes where he would actually drill and we'd do a technique over and over and over, 100 reps or whatever. And that, for me, really helped my game.
Yeah. Okay.
Because of that, I got a lot more confidence, especially in certain areas of my game. And I kind of, looking back, wish I had had that foundation from the beginning with white belt. If I'd been shown A, B, C, this is how you do this step, this is how you do this step, I had to kind of just learn by osmosis because there was so much free rolling at Devine. It was pretty much like sink or swim. They throw you to the sharks, and I'm not got any technique. I just had to survive. And to this day, I think that's why my defense is so much stronger than my attacks, because I've just had to be cannon fodder for years, for the first 5 years. So I was through to purple belt there at the beginning of 2014. I thought, right, I'm going to compete internationally. I'm going to give this a go. few Australians, especially Australian females, that had a lot of success. That
Yep.
was starting to really make a bit of noise on the international scene. So I thought I'll give it a go. I went over to LA for Adult Worlds as well, and I trained at Cabrinhas over
Yep.
there. Alliance in LA, and that just opened my eyes. It was almost like another world. The way that they ran the club, the way they ran the classes, just I was in love. And I guess it kind of was like you were in a relationship and maybe you married your first boyfriend sort of thing. And
Yeah.
so I came back to Australia after that and was just like, I'm just not happy, and started sort of looking around and having a bit of a feel for other clubs and how they did it. And I walked into Absolute and I just loved it straight away. So
Well, can you talk us through what did you experience in America? What in particular were you just like, wow, this is different and I like it?
yeah. Well, as I said, I mean, the way that Pete ran the classes there, it could be quite different now. But back when I was there, as I said, he'd just rock up, everyone just be hanging around. The class would just start. There would just be people lying on the mats while he explained the techniques. That was it. Yeah, there just seemed no structure, no discipline. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
when I went into Cabrinhas, it was like amazing. You had thongs you had to wear right up to the edge of the mat, and you had to take them off straight as. Whereas I can remember guys walking in and out of the toilets at Dabine without shoes on. Like, it was
Yeah.
so different. Oh, I didn't even have a change room at Dabine. Like, I had to change in the broom closet. Because I was the only chick. Like,
Yeah.
there was no point to waste the female change room. The boys changed in both change rooms, and I
Yeah.
was just left. But at Cabrinhas, it was like you were, I don't know, the female area, they had like a little container of like hair products and sanitary items and,
Yeah.
shampoo and conditioner. And it was like, wow, like I feel like I'm wanted here. I feel like
I feel
respected.
respected. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. You felt respected.
Yeah. I didn't realize, as I said, what other clubs were doing and just the other women and the whole vibe of the place. Everyone was so professional. It just sort of made me uneasy about what I was experiencing at back at the club, and also the level of technique that they showed and the teaching, the way they explained things and they drilled it. We all lined up. I'd not experienced that sort of discipline in a class before.
Yeah. And then so your eyes are open, you realize your first boyfriend's pretty shit, as you said. And then you come back and how do you stumble across Absolute MMA?
Yeah, and it just was similar to what I'd experienced in Cabrinhas. They just had a really good vibe in there. Everyone super friendly, very welcoming of women especially. And yeah, I just felt like I'd come home. So it was a bit tricky. It was almost like ending a relationship to have that conversation with my
Absolutely.
coach.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just honest. I didn't want to make up some other excuse, but I had to say, look, because at that time I was living in Greensboro, and his club was at that stage only in St Kilda. So I was driving all the way.
It's a long way.
3 or 4 times a week as a single mum, spending 3 hours commuting to get to this club that was, as I said, I just felt like maybe not giving me what I wanted. So I was just honest with him. I said, look, I really would love to be your first female black belt, but I cannot see myself being able to do this commute anymore. I can't physically travel like this. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I feel like I was pretty honest with him, because that was definitely a big factor, but it wasn't the main reason.
And how did that go down?
Yeah, he was great. Like, he was very, understanding. He said he's surprised that I'd kept traveling for so long anyway. He agreed, he wants me to keep, because I said to him, if I have to keep trying to come here, I'll possibly stop jiu-jitsu altogether. So he said to me, no, I don't want you to stop jiu-jitsu, keep training. You're welcome back here anytime. So it was really nice. And it meant that if I do see him at comps and things like that, it's not weird.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hear stories of people cutting gyms for a variety of different reasons. And it's so positive, I feel, that when it's a good breakup, if you will, because it really shows that the coach cares about the person, you know what I mean? And their development. So that sounds like a really good outcome.
That was good. That was nice. So I messaged Tiago to tell him that I'd be coming over.
Yep.
And he was wrapped. He was like, just made me feel $1 million, like straight off the bat. There was a big women's team there. I mean, there was easily 5 to 10 women on the mat just in my first class, and nearly every class after. Like, it absolutely be rare to find a class any time of the day or night when there's not at least one other chick in there. It's just really, I think it comes from the top, the culture from from the coaches there just really see women as athletes, not just as, you know, the women, like, as so different to men. Like they see us all as the same.
Yeah, that's
That's
great.
great.
And so you go to Absolute MMA as a purple belt?
Yeah. So I felt really odd. I guess maybe other people feel this too when they cross train or maybe have to leave. But especially as a purple belt, I felt a bit of pressure because I'd come from a club where we hadn't drilled and we hadn't done warm ups the way traditional places do it. So there's a little bit of anxiety around coming in as a higher belt. What should be, you should know that, you should know that. Whereas if you go in as a white belt, you've got that, you know, oh, I'm not meant to
You,
know anything. I'm only a
you can
white
kind
belt
of
kind of
hide a
thing.
little bit. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So this was like, God, they're going to think, what kind of a shit purple belt are you? Like, you've got nothing. You can't do anything. So there was almost more pressure than just changing clubs as a white belt. But didn't last long, that feeling. As I said, my team was just so, from straight off the bat, so welcoming of me. And yeah, haven't
That's
looked back.
great. And then how long till you get your brown belt?
And then I did a lot more competing under Absolute probably than what
Okay.
I'd done under Bean. Felt like a really good team atmosphere there as well. So I enjoyed that with the
Mm-hmm.
competing. So you travel as a team as well and do that. And I really enjoyed Purple Belt. Like, looking back, that was probably my favourite belt. As I said, I feel that's where you really craft out your game.
Yeah.
And for me, that was my probably most successful belt via competitions. So
Mm-hmm.
I got a silver at the Asian Open in 2015, which I sometimes still can't sleep at night when I think about the final and the crappy guard pull that I did, which basically cost me the whole thing. And I just stayed in turn for like 7 of the 8 minutes. Like, what the hell? Oh no, 7 minutes, 6 of the 7 minutes. Like, oh, anyway. So yeah, that was quite good. And then end of that, then I got my brown end of 2016.
Okay.
And yeah, that was with Tiago.
And then tell us about getting your black. Talk us through how it happened, the ceremony, and all that.
Yeah, so the brown at Absolute, the physical test is 2.5 hours, kind of in the hole with a new partner every 3 minutes. You get a break for 5 minutes, but it's not a lot of break. So yeah, it's pretty full on. And at Sabine, I hadn't had to grade like that to get blue or purple. So
Yeah. Okay.
that was quite an experience for me to do that for 2.5 hours at brown and
It's a
then to
very
do it
long
at 3
time.
hours at black.
Yeah.
I actually, looking back now, probably found the brown one harder. Maybe one, because I hadn't done it before, but two, I think they were actually quite a bit harder on me at brown. I felt very, with my black, a lot of the girls around me, like supporting me especially, to, I guess, protect me from the bigger, stronger guys or whatever. And yeah, just maybe the fact you're going for 3 hours as well, people maybe take a bit easier on you. But yeah, I found it quite tricky.
That is
grading.
a very a very long time to be
Yeah.
rolling with a whole bunch of fresh people.
And it's fresh meat every 3 minutes, a new fresh person. But worse as well is you're not actually able to get off your back. You have to stay in guard the entire time. If you sweep, 2 or 3 people will drag you back to your back. So
Wow.
it's an entire defensive guard, 2.5 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
No
Right.
sweeps even. Yeah. No sweep.
Okay.
You can sub. But yeah, it's meant to be, the theory behind it, I guess, is it's to show, that way of the warrior sort of thing, that heart, the martial spirit of just never give up, just keep going till you die.
And did you feel that as you're going through it?
Yeah, the brown, as I said, I found much physically harder. At the end of my black, I think my coach said to me, "Look at you! You look like you haven't even done anything. You're totally fresh." Because I felt, especially for black, just in such a good mindset that it was hard for me to think of it as a difficult thing, because it was like, I'm doing what I love with people like around me that I love. Like, felt like I was home. I felt like I was with my family, and I was just in an environment of doing something that is, for me, like, had become my passion, had become such a big part of me. Like, why would I not want to do that for 3 hours?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And did you, I mean, I'm thinking back now, we talked about how hard a triathlon would be. I think
Yeah.
we found this thing that would be harder than a triathlon. It's
Yeah,
avoiding
it
for
is.
3
Look,
hours.
physically it can be, but at the same time, it's just, I love jiu-jitsu. Like, this past 3 months without training jiu-jitsu has been so hard for me. I'd never, before I started 2009, So in the 11 years, this is the longest I've taken off ever of
Wow.
jiu-jitsu. Like, I don't take weeks off or 2 weeks off or anything like that. I just train all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then tell us about that feeling of sort of getting that belt wrapped around your waist and, how did it feel?
Yeah, look, I guess thought it was coming and coming. It was a weird one for me, Brown. Looking back, I wonder if it was almost not my preferred belt, because I just found it a bit of an in-between belt. Didn't do
Mm,
great in comps. I was kind of, and then it was this waiting of like, am I getting my belt soon? No, not yet. Am I getting it soon? So I was sort of like wondering, and then I started to doubt myself with my abilities, and all this sort of crazy mind stuff went on for me at brown belt. So when it finally happened, it was this weird kind of relief, but also, like a strange, just not, I couldn't really put into words what it is. It's kind of like having a kid type of moment, where it's
okay.
just this great event that's occurred in your life, and it's sort of the culmination of all your work, but at the same time, it doesn't really change anything either. So you
Yeah.
couldn't say, like, wow, now I finally made it. So I'm like, I know it, because I actually feel sometimes a bit embarrassed that I'm like, why am I standing in this line with people who are so much better than me? And I'm not, I need to be at the back of the queue because I still don't feel like I'm worthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a weird sort of mix.
It sounds like a very sensible source of humbleness that you have. You know what I mean? And it's a good
Thanks.
thing to look around and sort
Yeah,
of.
but no,
We're just having some connection issues. Can you hear me, Kim?
yeah, can you hear me?
Yep,
Yeah.
I got you. I got you. Sorry.
As I said, I
Um,
have 3 teenage boys, so it could be on my end that my Wi-Fi just can't handle this amount of traffic for them.
no worries. So Kim, let's talk about your boys or being a
Yep,
mother in
yep.
general. Tell me about how you juggled this passion, this hobby of yours, working as well as being a single mother.
Yeah, so when I was first starting it and they were really little, so Randall was still at home with me, I would take him with me, and that was part of why I was training at Sabine. They would, at that stage, one of the few clubs in Melbourne that did like 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. classes. So I'd drop the other kids at school, and then I could go and do a jiu-jitsu class and take Randall along and just stick him in the corner with like a at that stage it was like a DVD player, because they didn't have, laptops or iPads or anything back
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
those days, and a little, couple of snacks or whatever for him, and he would just sit on the side of the mat for a couple of hours while I would get choked out and
Yeah.
get beat up.
Yeah. And is it, I mean, if you had a young single mum who was sort of starting training again versus, let's say, a female that has no kids, is there a different approach
Yeah.
that you would give to the mother?
It's, as I was saying earlier, about that like balance of a relationship sort of thing, and time for yourself. In some ways, I think as a mother, it's almost more important, because it gives you
Yeah.
that different sense of identity as well. It's very easy to get lost in just being a mum, or, a lot of people will say that, even when they ask, what do you do for work? I'm just a mum or whatever. It gives you a chance to be someone else
Mm,
just for 2 hours or whatever a week while you're doing that task. But I think it's so important for you, especially as your kids get older. I can't imagine, if I hadn't really had a hobby like this, and now my kids are 20, 18 and 15,
yeah.
and they're starting to make their own way in the world. So I'm less important to them. I just wonder what I would be like had I not had this as well.
Had this thing that was yours, that you could
Yeah,
call
I guess so. And
Kim's.
it was a little bit unique, because
Mm,
jiu-jitsu is not a mainstream sport. It's a little bit bigger now, especially in like 2009. Nobody knew what it was, and so certainly females didn't do it very often.
yeah.
So in some ways, it made me a bit of a freak show. Like, I was a bit like a circus freak when I'd go to parties or whatever. It was always like, oh, this is my friend that does that Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
She's a martial artist. Sort of, it was just a weird thing that got conversation started, I guess.
Do you think your boys brag that their mum's a BJJ black belt at school or anything like that?
Not at all. It was the opposite. They were embarrassed. They're
Oh,
still
really?
embarrassed of me now. You should hear it. The conversations around the dinner table are like ridiculous. Like, oh, oh, be careful, Kim will choke you out. She's a black belt. Don't forget she's a black belt. Oh, have you heard?
Yeah.
And anything. If I'm in the shopping centre and I see someone like, some of those security guards, and I'll make a comment to them, something like, God, look at this guy. Like, God, I could just take that guy. They'll say, oh, listen to you. You're so up yourself. You're so conceited. You beat everyone. I'm like, oh, all right. So yeah,
that sounds like a normal teenager with their mum conversation. It just happens to be jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, maybe they're proud somewhere along the line, but they certainly don't tell me about it. No,
yeah,
it's the opposite.
Oh, that's great. So talk to us, Kim. I really want to understand the psyche that is behind this passion to compete. You know what I mean? Such an active competitor your whole life, to commit to competing, you have to have some sort of drive that takes you there. Talk to us about what is that drive. Do you feel like it's something that you have that other girls or other guys don't have, that pushes you to want to do this?
I'm not sure if I've always kind of had this or if it's kind of gotten worse as I've gotten older, but yeah, I just feel like, I don't know, my standards are probably quite high for people around me and certainly for myself. So I sort of think I'll always want to do everything I can to know that I've got to that standard.
Yeah.
So I think that's more what it is rather than a desire. Like I don't have like like a dream board with I want to be the world champion or whatever on it and look at it every day and think, right, how am I going to do that? It's more about just trying to maximize my time and do the best I can.
Yeah. Okay.
In life.
Yeah. And does that transcend into your work life as well?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm a pretty efficient person, I guess. I'm not big on time wasting. So that's probably a factor for me in terms of me achieving, what I've done or whatever, because I'll always sort of think, oh, I can train, in the morning, then I can do this. And then that means I can do this at night rather than I'm probably not very good at relaxing, like just sitting down. And, even for us to make this time to do this podcast, I took like 4 days because I'm like, okay, there's never, even today I'm thinking, maybe I'll leave it till next week. And I thought, no, I'll be training next week. I won't make time. So I like to kind of cram as much as I can into every single day. And I think that's more what it is rather than necessarily like want to compete, like wake up in the morning, like think about that gold medal or anything. Like I couldn't really care less. Like I've had comps where I haven't even medaled or where I've lost in inverted commas, but I've actually done better jiu-jitsu than comps where I've actually won and got the gold medal. But I think, God, that was terrible jiu-jitsu. So
I've read that.
I don't think of it like that.
You wrote that comment on one of your bios online, and I thought it was really profound. You know what I mean? That you were happier with, you weren't happy with jiu-jitsu where you medaled on, and you were happier with some of your jiu-jitsu that you were just doing in the gym sometime. That's a very powerful self-analysis that you have.
Yeah, but I've been almost like embarrassed of people when they've been like, well done, you got a gold medal. And that was crap. Like the opponent that I was against, like no offense to them, but at that time that was, I was better than them. And then I've had other tournaments where the standard is so high that you lose, but you're actually still probably better off because your jiu-jitsu is going to get exposed to that higher level.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was interested, Kim, on your opinion. Do you think that jiu-jitsu as a sport, now, I mean, every club is different, but in general, jiu-jitsu as a sport is a female-friendly sport?
No, not at all. God. I mean, it takes a special kind of crazy person to do jiu-jitsu at all, but an extra special crazy female to do it because you're in people's personal space, like so much. And it's not what we experience in day-to-day life usually. I mean, you don't even like to get on public transport crowded and, be obviously now in today's climate, it's not a meant, but back in the old days where you had to be crowded in with other people, like, I don't know, it's just the opposite. So touching strangers, especially in such close contact, it's quite overwhelming.
Yeah. And so how does that affect you when you see, a female who's starting off jiu-jitsu? What's the kind of advice you say to them? Do you find yourself you're a mentor to them? Do they look at you to be a mentor?
I try to, because I know what it was like. I mean, I was the only chick more or less at most days of my club for the first 5 years or so. So I know how much it sucks. So I guess if I do, I try and show some very basics of foundational kind of defense, because I just feel like as a chick, you tend to spend so long doing that if you can at least get a handle on that, it'll speed up the process to the enjoyment. Because I feel like there's a period at the very start where you've got to really embrace the suck of just getting killed over and over. And it sometimes, unfortunately, for females can be a little bit longer than it can be for guys, I think, because the guys have got that muscle mass to be able to, I mean, white belt, unfortunately, isn't always a lot of technique. You can brute strength your way out of a few things. So it's more in the sort of purple and up technique really comes to the fore, I think. But yeah, it's a really long road out of hell at the start of white belt for females, I think anyway. But maybe not. I mean, some other chicks I know who've come in from white belt and smashed it up from the beginning. You know, they just come in like a tornado, and they don't settle for anything. I sometimes think like the way you roll is like a reflection of your personality. So I'm quite reserved or quite measured. I'm like, wait, let's just see. I'm not flamboyant. I'm not going to suddenly cartwheel pass and make a rash change of decision or anything like that. Like, I'm taking my time. That's sort of the way I do my jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So I said anyway.
I really like that. I've never thought or heard of that before. The way you roll is the way your personality is. I'm gonna take that with me and see
if you think about people's personalities, those fiery ones, they tend to be they come at you like a
the more I think about it, I mean, it's all lining up a lot. I'm gonna take that away, Kim.
So, I mean, it sort of happens anyway. Like when you're training, you think, oh, look, I'm going to go to training and I'll get rid of this day I've had, like shake the cobwebs off, but you just can't. So it's sort of like frustrating. But at the same time, you can have had like a great day and then you go and train and you train amazing. So I think like your way you are, like in your mood, can also translate into what happens on the mat.
Big time.
So yeah, it's a weird one.
It's really cool. I love that. It's you're describing that rolling, which is in itself an art. It's really an extension of you, whether it's a short-term extension of that day or a deeper extension of your subconscious. Exactly. Oh, that's fantastic. That's a profound way of looking at it. I've never thought of that before. Thanks. So Kim, tell me about when you look back at your sort of career, your BJJ career. What are I'm going to ask you for the peaks and troughs. So what are your highs when you look back at it all? Or your high, the one high
trip that I took as a purple belt in 2015, that was great. That was, as I said, even though it was a silver, it was probably worth more to me than a lot of my golds. And that whole period of purple belt, especially where I really felt like I was coming into my own as being known for certain things in my game and stuff like that. And I just got a lot more confidence in myself. That was definitely one of my favorite times. And I've really enjoyed black belt so far. So it'll be my 1 year anniversary of black belt next week.
All right.
So
back into training.
3 months haven't rolled, but before that, I love black belt. So that's been equally as good so far.
Yeah. And talk us through that competition. Sorry, what competition was it?
Asian Open in 2015. There was a group of about 10 of us from my team that went over, and even more Australians. I think there was over 20 Australians that went over to Japan. I guess it's probably the closest big international comp that we can get to while traveling, because so many of them are just on the other side of the world. But it was just a really good vibe. Stayed with teammates and we got to know each other. It was the first time I'd traveled with a team like that before. I'd done other international comps, but it was a little bit more independent. So it was just great. The vibe at the comp itself was not as intense as it had been the prior year I had gone to adult worlds, but the vibe was certainly more than an Australian comp. So it was a really good mix, very well organised. I really loved Japan. It was my first time there. And it just was a really good period of my life, I think.
Is there a difference between how a competition in Australia is run versus your experiences overseas?
I think we're getting more professional now. I know certainly when I started Jiu-Jitsu, the comps in Australia were not like they are now. So especially when they're IBJJF, they're mostly pretty uniform. The Japanese run things, to the T. There was not a minute delays on any mat or anything like that. So that was great. Yeah. But it was very, just very well run comp. Really nice vibe.
Yeah, that's great. And opposite of your highs, when you look back, what's the low points of your BJJ?
Probably my period through the blue belt, you know, those early blue belt years, or that sort of time where you really, it's a long, for me, I found blue quite a long belt, to be honest. I was on it for a while, but you just don't have much skill yet, but you still have really high expectations. Well, I personally had quite high expectations, because you think, oh, I'm a coloured belt now, I should know this stuff, I should be doing this stuff, but you're still really just a beginner when you look at it from outside. Like, it's just a couple of years in. I think because of the depth of jiu-jitsu, though, you think a couple of years you should know this stuff by now, but it doesn't work like that. You're still really just a novice.
Yeah. Okay. And was there any time that you were close to giving up sort of jiu-jitsu, quitting the journey?
Really? I know a lot of people do. I guess I'm a bit stubborn like that. So I just didn't want it to sort of be, I used to do jiu-jitsu or that sort of thing. And maybe also my situation in life, in that I was single mom, and it was kind of like a social outlet for me to be able to go and train in this environment with other people versus having other adults around me outside of work. I didn't really have that much. So it became a bit of a social outlet as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was more than just a hobby. It was a part of your very sort of being.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Especially as I changed clubs and stuff like that, I found my new club much more social than my previous club. So that was great.
Yeah, that's cool. And do you see now? You've been in the game for a while now. From a woman's perspective, is there more women coming to BJJ nowadays?
100%, and more sneaking around. So as I said, when I started, I was not aware of any black belt women. I think there's maybe like a couple of purples when I first started. So to now come and do a comp where there's 2 mats of purple belt women running in an open weight division, that's great. So there's sometimes like pages and pages of white belt women that are entering comp. So there's heaps of women around. I mean, I went to the Australian Girls in Gi camp at the beginning of this year, and I think I was one of the earliest members of that in, I think it was about 2010 or so, but that like has over, like, how many women were there? I think there was, I can't even remember how many women are on A-Gig now. I'm probably going to get shocked. I think, is it something like 10,000 women or something that are doing jiu-jitsu? There's heaps. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think I would just pull that number out of somewhere, but there's a lot of women. There's so many women doing jiu-jitsu now.
And what do you think has sort of caused the growth in jiu-jitsu?
I think other women being there just helps women come along. So as I said, when I went, I was like one of 3 women. So it's a bit hard if you go to that class and there's only that one other chick. Whereas if as a new woman you come along and there's 10 women in the class, that's a pretty good odds you're going to get partnered up with them a little bit more. And there's women-only classes. Like, there was never that option when I first started. Like, women just, I think it's a nice way to transition into doing the mixed classes as well, because it is very intense. It is very close contact and intimidating, especially if you've never done anything like that before. Some women come from other martial arts, not quite so bad.
Yeah.
But I didn't. So it was very hard to sort of get your head around being so close to someone, especially a male. So, yeah.
It's, I just love hearing your journey when you said that there's, women's only classes now, which are quite common. And the first thing that pings into my head is Kim used to change in the broom closet.
Yeah, that's right. What I mean? And sometimes I actually have to almost have a go at some of the chicks at my club when they sort of might complain about something, and I have to say, hey, look around you. You've got like 20 other women on the mat with you in this class, and you've got so lucky. There's so many of you. You've got the choice of training with a brown belt woman, a purple belt woman. Like, I would have killed for those opportunities. Like, it's they're spoiled for choice now. It's a good thing.
All women are different, but have you got any advice for guys who aren't used to having a stack of women that train in the gym? What's the best way to approach training with the woman? Because I think most guys will just be like, I'm just going to treat them like a guy.
Yeah.
Is that the best way forward?
It's a tricky run. Yeah. Like, I remember, I was somewhere around blue belt where I finally got the guts to sort of say to a guy, because I find that it's sort of one or two things. They'll either do that where they'll just come full strength, or they're almost like a dead fish. They just do nothing. So there's no in between. But there was a guy who was going at me really hard. And I think, as I said, I was somewhere around blue belt, and I had to say, look, you know what? You're stronger than me. Let's take this opportunity of you partnering me to use technique, because then when you can go against someone your own size, a male your size, you'll have an advantage.
Yeah.
Because with me, and like I've actually had to say that even now as a higher belt, as a brown or black belt, I'll sometimes still say to guys, you can beat me with strength. They still can. Like I'll talk about leverage. I love jiu-jitsu, but the reality is that a guy's stronger than me. Even
Yeah.
a guy my weight is probably stronger than me. So there's no benefit to them, bench pressing me off or whatever they want to do. But use the ability of having a female and be more technical, because
Yeah.
that's going to be the difference for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good advice. And, it's, I think everyone gets in their stage of the jiu-jitsu career where you're like, all right, let's stop focusing on strength. Let's focus on technique.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think,
it.
as you're saying, coming up against a female, use that opportunity. Don't go the extreme strength. Don't go the extreme
Yeah,
dead fish, which I love
yeah,
that term.
yeah,
Use it as an opportunity to train your
yeah.
technique and not focus on it. That's really,
Yeah, but
really
I
good
feel
advice.
the more women you train with, I think the easier it will get. There's certainly guys that don't train with a lot of females, and they kind of like a deer in headlights when they see you, and they don't really know how to react. You have to sort of sometimes say, hey, just chill. I'm just a body, just
Yeah.
another person. So just treat me not quite as you would a guy maybe, but you don't need to freak out about it being anything different.
Yeah, no, that's some solid advice. For those that haven't heard of it before or want to know information, can you give us a quick summary of Girls in Gi,
Australian Girls in Gi,
Australian
yeah.
Girls in Gi?
Yeah, so that's I guess a project or a group you might want to call it that started around 2010. Jess Fraser was the founder. She and I was, as I was saying, not a lot of females doing jiu-jitsu. So we sort of thought, well, rather than us being one or two girls at our individual clubs, let's get together. Like, I think it was like once a month or once every 2 months and run an open mat, and we'll all train together so we can have the opportunity to train with other females.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose it sort of grew from there.
Yeah, and so and you still get together
Yeah,
often,
so
have
Jess
these open
Fraser's
mats?
it's its own entity now almost. Like she runs
Wow.
this camp at the beginning of the year that has like women from all over the world actually that come and
Wow.
train together, and it goes for like 3 nights. It's held in all sorts of different locations, and she runs competitions through the year, and it's a massive massive gig.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And so what's been your proudest moment?
In life, I'd actually have to say having my kids.
Yeah.
My proudest.
Yeah.
And I guess getting the black belt would be the proudest in terms of the journey, cliche or whatever. But that would be overall.
Yeah. Unless the boys act up and then the belt goes above the boys, I assume.
That's right. Yes, depending on what day it is. Yes.
And you're a veteran of the sport. You've been around for a while. What has changed in your time in the BJJ world?
Oh, so much. As I said, I mean, when I started, the competitions used to be run, like in halls with like pieces of paper where they didn't even have, scoreboards or anything like that.
Yeah.
The amount of jiu-jitsu gyms around, there was Melbourne had 2 or maybe 3 or so
Yep.
going, certainly not one on every corner. And it's just huge now. I mean, when I started, as I said, hardly anyone knew what jiu-jitsu was in the general public to sort of explain it. Now it's rare to find a person that hasn't heard of it in some capacity, even if they don't really know what it is, at least they've heard of it. So it's grown out of this world.
And do you feel the sport itself has changed, the art at all?
Yeah, a little bit. I guess it's modernized a lot. Like there's a lot more, certainly a lot more techniques. There's people can seem to almost make an income off it now, much more than they were back when I started. It was more or less always a hobby from what I knew. And there just seem a lot more professionals with it now. It's really grown, not just for jiu-jitsu, but like especially the no-gi game. It's really gotten legs. So
yeah, okay. All right, fantastic. And sort of what's next for Kim Cousins when COVID's starting to dry up?
Yeah.
Fingers crossed, training starting next week, just in time for your 1-year anniversary of your black belt.
Yeah.
But in the future,
I don't know. Look, I went to the World Masters in 2018 with this goal of becoming a world champion, Masters champion, and it didn't happen for me. So there was a little bit of a plan at the beginning of this year that I would try again this year as a black belt, and obviously not happening. But who knows if in the future that might be something I go down that path and claim that one.
Yeah, going for a Masters World Champion. That's
Yeah.
can we lock it down as that's going to happen on this
Well, we have
podcast?
to see what happens with the world situation as well. That's
Yeah,
another
okay.
thing. And I've got to be honest with you, I've got to see how I feel even just getting back to training. I'm a little bit anxious about the lack of conditioning that has occurred over the last 3 months.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
feeling
yeah.
very confident.
That's all right. But the good thing is everyone else has got a lack of conditioning as
I
well,
hope so,
hopefully.
except for those BJJ couples who've been training together.
Oh, that is so annoying. It's so annoying that they get that. They get that. All right, Kim. Well, hey, look, that has been such an amazing opportunity to get to know you, to get to hear your story. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for being so open with us, and some really, really sage advice that you gave, not only about BJJ but about life and about relationships and being a mother. It's been absolutely fascinating. So really, thank you so much for your time. And listeners, look, we hope that you have enjoyed this episode of Behind the Black Belt with Kim Cousins. If you're ever in Melbourne and you're looking for somewhere to train, check out Absolute MMA. They've got a stack of gyms. Go to www.absolutemma.com.au and join up and do some of the awesome training that Kim has been talking about with us tonight. If you want to know more about Kim, you can check out her podcast. That is the Roll or Die podcast. You can find them on Facebook at Roll or Die Podcast. And you can also look for them on Spotify. And give them a listen. I've listened to a few of their episodes. If you want to know about BJJ, the scene, what's happening down there, and all these awesome practitioners, definitely give that a listen. Highly recommended. And you can also follow Kim on Instagram. She is at Kim Cuz BJJ. That's Kim CUZ BJJ. And again, Kim Cousins, thank you so much for being with us on the show tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. Have you got any final words before we wrap up?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much for having me. This is great. I feel like a bit of a celebrity, actually. It's a bit weird. My kids couldn't believe that I was doing this. Like, why would anyone want to talk to me? And I guess it's possibly their demeanor or whatever. But I can even remember, like, when I first got my blue belt, they said to me, like, why did you get that? Like, you're the worst person there. And I was like,
thanks.
I don't know either. I really don't know how it happened. So I guess what I'm saying to people, if there's anyone out there that doubts themselves or isn't sure about whether they want to keep pushing through, like, keep going. It's not actually rocket science maybe some people have got this amazing ability or amazing athleticism or whatever, but it isn't as much about that as just keep going. Like, just keep showing up. Like, for me, I would always try and fit at least 3 classes a week in just to keep progressing. So just keep showing up, try and do what you can to get on the mat. The more time you're on the mat, the easier jiu-jitsu gets, and then the progress comes. So just keep going and
Awesome.
Enjoy.
Super wise words, and what a great way to finish up this episode. Thank you so much, Kim Cousins. And until next time, ladies and gents, this is Rich signing off for Behind the Black Belt.
Behind the Black Belt is proud to support Veteran Grappling. Veteran Grappling is using the grappling arts to improve the lives of military veterans and first responders. Visit www.veterangrappling.com to learn about scholarship opportunities and more.
Join our community on Facebook and our website at www.behindtheblackbelt.com. Behind the Black Belt is a TDP Studios production. Behind the Black Belt is copyright of Richard Thapthing Thong and TDP Studios. The music used in this episode is Rocking Forward by X Take Rux and is used under an Attribution International 4.0 license.